Okay, so we've had a thorough look at loop mode and sequencer mode. We've also checked out the global parameters and the effects parameters. Let's get into granular mode, because Cycles isn't just a loop manipulator, loop processor, it's also a granular processor. And if we click G here, we go into grain mode. And there you'll see the GUI changes quite a bit. We still have our 4 grids, where we've got 16 of them in each here. And we have all these parameters down here for grains, and we also have another random set of parameters, just like we have in loop mode. And over here we have some effects, and then we have a source mode. I think the easiest way to explain this is to play the loop as it is in loop mode. Okay, and then switch over to grain mode. As you can hear, totally different, both very beautiful. It's very hard to explain the fundamentals of grain mode with all the modulation that's going on in the preset loops that you drag in from the browser. So off camera, I'm going to reset all the parameters to 0, because then I can start to explain from the ground upwards, as it were, what is going on with all these 4 grids here. Okay, so I'll just do that very quickly. Okay, so I've put everything basically to 0. Here we go down to our parameters. For grains, we have grain position, grain density, we have an envelope shaper here, we have the size of the grain, we have the volume, we have the tuning of the grain, and you can see I've set that to the middle, which is actually 0. And then we have grain scale. Volume is up as well, because obviously we want to be able to hear something, so I've got it at 0 dB, but everything else is at 0. If we click into random mode, I've also turned off all these random modulations, which I'm going to explain in a bit. If we press play now, you're not going to hear anything. All you're going to see is just one of these segments lit up. Now if I was to change the grain position from here, you'd see it simply goes across all of the 4 grids. We can bring it back again, but we can't really hear anything, and that's because we have such a small grain size and the density. So let's start working on some of these. You see the density, that's 2 every bar. Then we got triplets, we got 1 every bar. Let's go to 16ths here. You might be able to hear that now. Open the size up. There we go. Now what that's doing, you can hear that's repeating the very first segments there that we've got of our loop. And then as the position moves along, we're kind of scanning along the loop. Okay, so the density, you can hear that it's doing it in 16ths. If we were to slow that down, and then back again. Of course, the size, if we reduce the size, you hear it just kind of clicks. And then we have this envelope, and you can hear that it's softening the attack. And here we have scale, so we can change it from chromatic to major, minor. Let's try and find that octave and a 5th scale. There we go. And the tuning, we can keep it 0. Because it's a nice kind of basic pitch. And yeah, that's it. That's our grain part. So what on earth was going on when we first played this in grey mode? Well, that is because of the modulation. And we're going to dedicate a chapter to modulation in a bit. But first of all, we're going to use the random modulation to start bringing this grain processor to life. So here you have, again, parameters down at the bottom. So this is the position, and we're going to introduce some random modulation to the grain position. That's really nice. Just bring in a bit of delay here. Okay. And here we have the random timing. At the moment, you can hear the changes are all regular. We're going to introduce some irregular random movement into that kind of rather staccato sound. I think I'm going to keep that just a tiny bit of random in there. Now some of these can go backwards. That's nice. Maybe keep it down there. Let's get some panning from left to right, introduce some randomness. That's really nice. And we have our volume. I don't really want to have big volume leaps, so we'll just keep that nice and subtle as well. And now we can introduce octaves at random. Don't forget, the higher the random amount, the more chance there is of these parameters actually kicking in. So a high value and you'll get lots of those octave leaps. A low value and you'll just get the odd one or two. And we can introduce some really nice analog-like pitch drift. Again, a subtle setting, otherwise starts to sound like a broken tape machine. So that's a really nice way to introduce a bit of analog drift, just 1 or 2% of random amount. And maybe we can go back to our basic parameters and start changing some of these. It's a nice kind of ambient pad. Don't forget you've got these effects on the right hand side. We can thin this sound out. Or we can take some of the top off for a really warm sound. And there we have it. That's basically how grain mode works. We've worked all the way up from the very bottom, putting everything to 0, and you can see how the grain parameters and the random parameters work in tandem to get the movement that gives the granular processor its distinctive sound within cycles.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.